Thank you, Vern. Thank you, Chair. What a great privilege it is here for me to speak this evening with many of my colleagues, all in honor of support of Michael D. I believe in principles, and one of my primary principles is to back a winner. I believe that Michael D. I had actually the opportunity and privilege to be with our current president, Mary McAleese, out in Tallahassee this morning. And yet again, after 14 years, she performed her presidential duties magnificently. And so much of the talk afterwards was centered on the huge task that will be placed on the shoulders of the one who wins this race. Then, namely, the task to meet the standard set by our current president. And in my view, there is only one person who can do that. And I know that should he be given the opportunity and the privilege to become President of Ireland, Michael D. will bring his vision, gravitas, values, and intellectual power that Ireland needs at this time to recover our economic and our social sovereignty, and to light the torch of possibility not only for our own people, but for the European and the international community as well. Michael D., as Bernard has just outlined, has articulated that his presidency will be built on the pillars of 4 central ideas or values: inclusive citizenship, a creative society, a real republic, and an Ireland with a strong international reputation, especially in the arena of human rights. And I love that arena. But what would make a great president, and what Ireland needs at this time, is not one of these values, but absolutely an integration of all 4, which in my belief, only Michael D. has the capacity to deliver as the future president of Ireland. What we need in Ireland is a new synthesis, and again, in my opinion, that synthesis should weave together those values proposed by Michael D. There exists extraordinary diversity in Ireland today, and indeed, Michael D., with other great equality and human rights leaders, many of whom are with us here this evening on the panel, and many of you here in the audience, we've worked hard to develop a new appreciation that equality will only be delivered when we acknowledge, respect, and affirm diversity. Michael D. has stood for and has practiced respect for diversity of all kinds: race, class, ethnicity, gender, sexual identity, different abilities, and not just in Ireland, but on the world stage. When I came to Ireland in the early 80s, some of my first encounters with Michael D. happened when he and I stood together, again, along with others, campaigning at that time for a Latin America that would be free of dictators and free of the immense oppression that characterized many of those countries at that time. He was one of the first to challenge, both theoretically and through political activism, the predominant global developmental economic model prevalent then, where the Great North developed its riches on the backs of the underdeveloped South. Could we not have a world where one hemisphere could develop itself without devaluing, depressing, and exploiting another hemisphere? This was the kind of vision that Michael D. was articulating even then. Creativity. There's no one who would deny that we need a new synthesis for Ireland, for our world, which will be born of the creative imagination. And here again is a man who has integrated in everything he has stood for an imagination that has always held and delivered a creative solution. My life partner, Anne-Louise Gilligan, who's here with us this evening, great fan of Michael D.'s as well, is very fond of saying that what you image is what you get. Or image the possible and change will be yours. I think that Michael D.'s vision and work in developing the arts in this country, particularly his commitment that art is for everyone, and that the artistic, imaginative, spirit capacity of every human being ought to be nurtured and supported. I think also his vision for education. As an educator, it's so critical, and that vision he has for Ireland today. But you know, he had it again so many years ago, and I'm reminded here of the creative and imaginative way he spoke about education. We were so inspired there. 1992, when his lecture, one of the lectures given of the Open Mind, the radio program, remember that? where he argued that education ought not focus primarily on the reproduction of what is happening in the economy and society, but it ought to be geared towards shaping change in society and the economy. Shaping change, of course, is a fundamentally creative act. And certainly when he asked the question in that lecture, can education be joyful? I knew that he was also a man with a deep understanding of how human happiness was fundamental food for human imagination. And a real republic, while in recent years Ireland had a new visibility as a country with extraordinary achievements, as the underpinning of this model clearly proves to be faulty. Our future president must hold an integrated vision of economic and social development in our land. A real republic keeps both of these in balance. A real republic opens up possibilities for its citizens and residents to participate in governance as well as increasing the gross national product, to know and support the value of community and solidarity as well as individual achievement and competitive advantage. Michael D. is a man who has held a world perspective in all that he's done locally, nationally, and internationally. And of course, we do live on one planet, one world. So with Michael D. as our next president, Ireland can become once again a beacon in our one world.